Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 859. My opponent started off with e4 and I chose to play c5, the Sicilian defense. So we get the normal moves for a while, knight f3, d6. There are other moves, of course, d4, c takes, knight takes, but this is a well-worn path here. And then knight to f6. You bring this knight out first to attack this pawn, force white to defend it, blocking his c-pawn so that white can't play a Maroczy buying type of setup. And now this is the kind of the big split among various kinds of Sicilians. There's a6, the Najdorf. There's knight c6, the classical that I played in this game. There's e6, the Scheveningen, and there's g6, the dragon variation. All interesting ways to play. I play knight c6 because it's not totally the main line like the Najdorf, and so sometimes my opponents don't know so much what to do with it, but bishop g5 is the most common response here, and a good response. This is the Richter-Rauzer attack. Black normally plays e6 to allow the queen to recapture and avoid some pawn damage. And now knight takes c6 is a rare move. I just wanted to go over how this opening usually goes. This is also for my own benefit. Since I play this a lot, I would like to have a better understanding of it. So after the queen comes up, I normally play with a6, the top choice there. One of the ideas of a6 is to prevent a knight from hopping into this square and ganging up on the d-pawn. A weakness, this d-pawn is a weakness of this setup for black, and you do have to take a little bit of care for it. It's also the reason why this bishop is staying back here for the moment, because when the bishop comes up here and white takes, if you take back with the bishop, you can leave this pawn under-defended. So white castles queenside. That was the point of the queen lift there, piling up more pressure on the d-pawn. Black ignores that for a moment, playing bishop d7, still keeping this bishop back. And then white continues with f4, preparing for a kingside pawn storm. And now this line with b5 I don't actually like, but I will show it to you. I think I'm avoiding this line just to show you what goes on here. This is actually playable, but you have to take back with the pawn here. If you take back with the queen, you run into trouble after e5. Either you lose the tempo retreating and then this pawn probably gets captured. But if you take, there's this shot, knight takes b5 there because the queens are the queen and the rook are piled up over here, so you got to drop back and defend it. Let's see, this can continue, and the knight can come in here with check, and the queen comes in here, and now you can see the king has no moves, it can't castle, and this looks pretty horrible. So you can't really play like that. That means that after this b5 move and white takes the bishop, you have to take with the pawn. You can see that's why that's the top choice there. And I've been in this position a couple times. It's a little bit difficult to play. So I'm looking for alternatives to this setup. So let's back up here. So instead of playing b5 at this moment, it seems like it's okay to actually develop the bishop here. And at this point, if white takes with the bishop, it's actually okay to take back here. And let's see, white can win the pawn. White can actually win the d-pawn here, but this turns out to be okay for black. So like after this, here and here, and just keep trading. And you're down a pawn, but you have the bishop pair, and you can inflict some more pawn damage by taking the knight. You have no trouble castling if you want to castle. Sometimes these advanced pawns can become weak. Anyway, it looks like black has enough play for the pawn at this point. So I think that's probably the line I would choose in the future if we ever get to it, to get that to that position. But anyway, he avoided all those mainline and challenging lines for black by just taking here. And this is normally pretty good for black. Black gets an extra pawn in the center, and we'll push one of these forward to try and increase his center influence. And then this line e5 apparently is playable. It was still in the opening book. In addition to taking like I did, there's also an interesting alternative, the chess engine point out, which is to play queen a5, pinning that pawn. So if he takes the knight, you take the bishop. Interesting way to play. And he can't take here because the bishop is hanging. So anyway, that was rated as pretty good for black by the chess engine. This is also good for black. So there's just not a particularly good line for white to play. Maybe if white's going to play this way, you could play with the queen to f3 and try to put pressure here. Now this doesn't have to end in a loss for white. It's just that white is slightly worse. It's not like he's a whole pawn down even. If black plays this correctly, yeah, we're just out of the book here. He took the in a line like this with bishop h4, say king unpins, he just castles queenside. He can get enough compensation for the pawn. Looks like this is a decent way to play. And in fact, there's a cute tactical trick, which is why I'm continuing on down this chess engine line, because I just wanted to show you this trick. You know, I've grabbed that pawn and I'm holding on to it, and at this point, all my sins come back to punish me. I get punished for my sins here. He can just grab that pawn, and if I take the rook, this bishop comes out with check, and you can see, you know, I haven't developed here. This bishop is still blocking my king's escape. The two bishops, I've got the king in a crossfire here, so there's no king moves. You have to block with the bishop, and the rook comes out with check. Let's see, you have to block with the bishop again, and then he can just start taking stuff here. You step out of the way, and here. And so he sacked a rook, but he got two bishops. So he has a rook and two bishops against two rooks, which is an advantage. And my pawns are going to fall. These bishops are good on the open rank, on the open board, and my rook here is strapped in behind my king. So I've got all kinds of issues here, and this is just winning for white. So if we back up, that was actually still a playable line up to the point where I take the rook. I actually can't take the rook. I need to play something like bishop to e6, and then the game continues, and this is in the range of about even. And then let's count the pawns here. I'm still a pawn up here, but my pawns are somewhat scattered and disreputable looking, and white is fine. But white doesn't have any advantage here either if black plays that correctly. So I think this whole line is just kind of bogus. But bishop h4 is the best try here if you want to try and salvage this line. He took, and after I take back, I'm really just a pawn up for nothing. Castled kingside. I went over here. Actually, the chess engine slightly prefers king to c7, but this seems to be okay as well. But maybe, yeah, king c7 was maybe a little bit more accurate. I was undecided during the game. He played with g4. I developed my bishop. Played king b1. I was checking him, of course. And I go bishop b7. Actually, I was thinking I had the option of playing bishop to a6 here, but of course I can't play that. I would just lose a piece there. So really, bishop b7 or bishop to d7 were the only ways to develop the bishop in this position. And good thing I didn't play that silly blunder. But it's after he pushed the g-pawn forward, it's pretty natural to put the bishop on this diagonal looking at his rook there. So he blocks the diagonal with bishop g2, play rook a to d8. He goes knight a4. And then here, taking is okay. But the chess engine did not like rook d8 here. It didn't like offering more exchanges. It wanted to keep this rook and two bishops versus rook, bishop, knight configuration and play with f5. And now this is interesting because it actually loses the pawn the way the chess engine wants to play it, or gives back the pawn. But it gives a big advantage. Actually, it doesn't even take right away. What does it do? Oh, it takes here first. And then takes here. And then black pushes on like this. So let's see, it's 4 versus 2 on this side and 3 versus 1 on this side. So it's even material. But black has a couple advantages. Black has the bishop pair, and and black has the more advanced pawns, so they're going to become dangerous more quickly, and it actually gives a winning edge to black in this position, even even being down a pawn. Anyway, I was trying to hold on to my extra pawn. Played rook to d8. Also, I thought the endgame, just bishops versus bishop and knight, would be pretty good for me. But he does have a way to get to a even position here. I was not taking into account the fact that he can get into a position with opposite colored bishops. That was the factor I was neglecting. After knight to c5, well, once again, the chess engine wants to give up that pawn, play bishop to c8, keep the bishop pair. I was trying to keep the extra pawn, but actually this position, if he had just taken my bishop here, this is just a drawn position. I have the extra pawn, but the bishops are of opposite color, and I don't have enough other advantages here to win this. So this would be a way for, this was, well, there's one more chance. This is a chance that white had to hold the position to a draw. He never really had winning chances after the opening, but he could have gotten a draw at this point. So, for example, it could continue with bishop to e4, put the bishop on a good square, attacking my pawn. I can develop my bishop and counterattack his pawn, and then you can see we can trade. But this is the problem with opposite colored bishops. You know, I can't defend my pawns with my bishop. He can't defend his pawns with his bishop. They tend to your pawns tend to go on squares of the opposite color, and and then they just can't make any progress. So anyway, that's a drawn position. Let's see. I went king c7. Here he played h4. I played bishop to f8, attacking his knight, and here he dropped his knight back to d3. Once again, knight takes b7 probably leads to a pretty drawish position. It wasn't quite as clear as the other case, but still looking pretty good in terms of white being able to get a draw. So after he dropped his knight back to d3, this is actually just a win, and this is the kind of thing I was looking for when I played this variation. Selected this line, going for the endgame with the bishops against the knight. And you can see the two bishops on the open board just kind of dominate the pieces, and I'm trying to keep both those bishops alive and just chase them around and bring my king forward. Bringing the king forward is very important in lots of openings, and that's going to be the critical piece that breaks through. At some point, you know, we may even get down to opposite colored bishops in this game, but if my king breaks through, I can mop up enough pawns that it's still going to be a win for me. Let's see, and that's what happened here. Yeah, I'm now 2 pawns up. It is opposite colored bishops, but in addition to the extra pawn, I also have a superior king position, and it's a pretty easy win from here. So I bring my king in, gobble up another pawn or two, and then just start pushing my passed pawn forward, forcing him to sacrifice his bishop, and now I just have to make sure that I queen before he does. I can even sacrifice my bishop for if he gets queening chances over here, because my pawn is closer, but of course I don't even have to sacrifice my bishop the way he played it. Well, it would take him several moves. He would have to bring his king. No, he could go here with his king, sorry. If he were to bring his king directly to this square, then he could push here and I would sacrifice my bishop, but my pawns would then win, so there was no point in doing that. He played a king takes. I pushed my pawn forward, brought his king over, I moved my bishop in front of his pawn, and he decided to resign at this point. There's nothing to stop me from moving my king out of the way and bringing that pawn through for a queen. Okay, so anyway, it was an interesting game, although it was kind of a self-destruction by white. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again soon. Bye.